Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by Fireheart Pictures and viewers like you. Thank you. Imagine our world if nobody shared their talent. We wouldn't have electricity, email, smartphone, and my personal favorites, candy corn cupcakes and chocolate. What a gloomy world it would be. We benefit from other people's talents. Most importantly, our gifts and talents aren't ours to keep. We must share it with others, like candy corn cupcakes. So tonight, we meet an artist who shares his talent to bring meaning and understanding to global cultural issues like candy corn cupcakes. I'm so happy you're joining us.
From Los Angeles, this is KLCS PBS. Welcome to Everybody with Angela Williamson, an innovation, arts, education, and public affairs program. Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
Well, it looks interesting. I'm Richard Wilks, and I'm a sculptor who works in waste plastic. I attended Burning Man 15 years ago and really loved the whole concept there of participating with art. So all of my work has that level of participation. It's something that you can walk up to and get hands-on. Mostly what I do is artwork that rotates and spins. And part of the reason why I do that is I'm really fascinated by zoetropes. And so I usually incorporate some kind of zoetrope that relates to nature. And I really have a strong interest in the environment and all the waste that's happening with waste plastic. And I decided to move my art into a place that really respected materials and didn't create more waste for the world. And so that's why I'm working with waste plastic these days. At the beginning of any waste plastic process, you've got to grind up your waste. And so this is the shredder that we use. This is part of a suite of machines that I built based on the precious plastic open source plans. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. It's a bit loud. So this is breaking it down to small little flakes. And ultimately, there's some white flakes in there, but this is what they ultimately look like. The problem is large scale, so my art is big, and I really want you to be impacted by it. And also there's a level of my art that's kind of speaks to what's happening with plastic. It's plastic in our environment. It's such an easy thing. It's very convenient. And I think we're all seduced by the convenience of plastic in our world. And so what I wanted to do is sort of have that same concept where you're seduced by the art. What is that? You kind of walk into it, you start participating with it. You meet total strangers who are also participating in it. You start a dialogue. And that's kind of the crux of and the foundation of what inspires me to do this large scale work. Burning Man gave me that canvas. It was just a big open canvas, so you want to do something big. And you also get to meet a lot of really interesting people. So part of my process in creating zoetropes is designing them in a way that's structured. So it's called sequentially designed elements. And so what I do is on the computer, I end up doing a 2D version to make sure all of my elements are doing what I want them to do. It's really rough. It's a really quick mock-up. And I built this wheel that spins, and I've got it hooked up to a battery right now. So it spins, and then I use my Illumiscope app to see what the action is looking like. And I can control the speed. So what I'm getting is the large petals in the background are moving into center, and then I've got the tentacles off the center of the flower. They're growing and opening and closing. And then in the middle part, I'll have these mushroom-like elements that also move into the center. And this, again, allows me a 2D look at what the elements will end up becoming, the action that they'll perform. This is a little mock-up. I like to do little studies. And so you can see it has this very kind of fungi, sort of organic-looking feel to it. And that's what all of this will look like eventually. And this is all waste plastic. So if anybody would like to learn more about what I'm doing or volunteer, participate, you can check out my website at richardwilksartist.com. Or better yet, come in person. We have Art Walk that happens twice a year. I'd love to share what I'm doing, and if anybody, again, wants to participate, I'm always looking for volunteers and help.
Richard, oh my goodness, I learned so much from you and that field report. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Well, I can't move forward until we talk about, they normally say the elephant in the room,
Right.
but we're going to say the candy corn cupcake in the room. And I will try to get through this entire interview without my stomach growling as well. But, okay, candy corn, I see that by itself. Cupcakes, of course, but you put it together. What's going on in Richard's mind that he comes up with this incredible art piece?
Well, so about 12 years ago, I started attending Burning Man out in Nevada. And when you go there, you can't really show up with anything that's usual. You got to come and show up with something that's really mind-blowing, or, you know, and it's big. It's a big site. It's 5-mile diameter, area. So you need to get around. And so I thought, well, let's create a vehicle that can get, at least myself around, and whoever else wants to join in. And so I actually, this is not my original art concept.
Really?
There's a woman, Lisa Pongrace, out of Berkeley, and it's part of an art car collective that I joined. And so everybody has cupcakes. So we all have different flavors, but they're all scaled the same size. So it's 18 times the size of a regular cupcake. And so how you jump into the group is you come up with your own ingredients. In this case, candy corn was kind of the primary ingredient. And there's other types. There's one that was called an English muffin, had the Union Jack on the top, kind of thing. And so actually the candy corn came from my daughter, who was just learning how to drive at that moment. So this was her first car, and we built it together. So my family and I, we build a lot of stuff together. So we're always crafting when they were younger, and then, vehicles when they're older now.
Okay, so you come up with this concept and you present it to your cupcake friends.
Yep.
And then you just build it and decide, I'm going to take this to Burning Man?
Yeah. So so what happens is that depending on your build skills, I can start from scratch. I've got a lifelong passion of building, and I used to work at Disney, and so a lot of building environments that I've learned how to tell a story and build something from.
Starting to see who Richard is about now.
Yeah,
okay, keep going.
So I can build. So sometimes people get like a utility vehicle, like a small scooter, and they'll drop that in. So this one's built from scratch. So depending on your build skills, you build to the level that you're comfortable with. But the base idea is that it's a certain size, and you can come up with your own topping.
It seems that this has caught on because you've had some really incredible people that we know driving this.
Yes, I have.
Creation.
Yeah,
so how does that happen? Do they just walk up to you and say, I want to drive your candy corn cupcake?
Yeah, and so I'm very open with sharing, and I love people, and that's part of what you do at Burning Man is you participate and share, and that influences my other artwork, which I know we'll get into in a little bit. So I'm always offering, jump in this, take a ride. How often do you get a chance to jump into some artwork and actually wrap it around you, and you get a lot of attention, which can be good or bad depending on the kind of person you are. But it does bring people to you. this has actually been on like The Bachelor, and if you live in LA, these opportunities come up.
Yes.
And so it's seen a lot of interesting experiences and met a lot of people, and continues to. And now it's my wife's full-time Burning Man vehicle.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah.
Oh, such a good husband.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, before we move on from the candy corn cupcake, one more thing. Do you see yourself doing any more, like in the series of cupcakes, another vehicle? Like you said, this is your wife's. Are you going to do one so that we have a his and hers?
That's a good idea, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, but I think for me, once I build something, I'm pretty much ready to move on. I'm already starting to move on, actually, at the end of it. And so I'm got too many ideas. I don't have enough time, to build them all. So I'll have another vehicle developing. I do, actually.
You're an artist. You have so many ideas, and you cover a lot of different points of view. I mean, this one's fun, but you take the environment into consideration when you're doing this. But a lot of your other pieces, too, actually get people to talk about different global issues. And has this always been part of Richard, or has it been something that's evolved over time?
I would say it's always been a part of me, but I've been kind of revealing it as I've gotten older, as I've developed, more hand skills and conceptual skills. I guess all the way along through my education, high school, I went to a junior college for 3 years, saved money to get into college. I actually went to Art Center over here in Pasadena, and so all along the way, I can see kernels of, not candy corn, but kernels of corn. Little nuggets of how I was interested in learning about another culture or other people or the unknown, that kind of thing. And then when I graduated from college, I had a very commercial career for 25 years, had my own studio, and worked for companies like Disney and Target and Nokia and that kind of thing. And so in each of those projects, I was trying to infuse this ability that we're all connected.
Yes.
And we need to kind of really listen to each other and try to even the playing field as far as like the power hierarchy, that kind of thing. So I was seeing that in all of my work. And so eventually I just said, I've got to get my own ideas out there and not, it was great to make money and work with other people and that kind of thing.
But it's burning in your soul and you need to get it out.
Well, and in burning, that's when I went to Burning Man.
Yes.
It was 15 years ago I went to Burning Man, but right after that, I really felt like I needed to get my own ideas out there. And Burning Man gave me that canvas, really big open canvas to do that. So,
well, when we come back from our break, I would love for you to tell us about some of those pieces and the meanings behind that, so that we can not only get this information out to our audience, but to show how you've taken your art form to allow us all to be better in this place that we're living in. So stay with me. You'll come back after the break, and then you'll personally walk us all through some of those art pieces.
Forward to it.
Thank you, Richard. And come back as Richard tells us stories behind his phenomenal art pieces.
I do my part, I recycle smart. I do my part, I recycle smart. I do my part to save our planet empty and dry. For I can it empty and dry, to save our planet empty and dry. For I can it empty and dry, empty and dry, empty and dry.
For more tips on proper recycling, visit irecyclesmart.com. Do your part. Recycle smart.
Welcome back. I'm here going to continue my conversation with Richard, and we will be students in learning how art can really impact and change our lives. Richard, you were telling us, we spent the first segment just talking a little bit about, the candy corn cupcake, but really we were able to transition to the meaning of why you create this art. And what's really interesting is that you create this art, you build it so that we can learn, that you're learning, and you start with research. And normally people don't understand that with artists, it is about research, especially if you want to share your message with the world. So how does that start with Richard?
Well, it starts actually with me, and that's kind of my own personal philosophy that that I've been developing, throughout my 58 years on this planet, which is if I can check in with myself and understand myself more clearly, more deeply, then I'm not going to allow anything that's negative or any of that kind of toxicity to come out of me. I'm going to heal myself. And that's what I've been doing. And then with my art is actually been a healing process for me. So, and to your point about learning, so I tackle like a simple subject. Like one idea I was exploring was water, right?
Yes.
And so with water, we all take it for granted.
I know. I was just drinking some myself.
Yeah. And so, and then we'll get into the waste plastic thing in a little bit. But back to the water. So I did a lot of research. It took me 3 years to do the research and to build this project called Aquatrope. One of the, I chose like 8 different sort of portals or ways of thinking about it. And one of it was very literal, which is like we have over 30 different types of water within us. So I'm calling it like the ocean within. And so if you can, back to my first point, which was if you're taking care of yourself and hydrating and eating right and exercising and all that, then you're going to stay in balance. And so that was just one of the discs. So it's that's how it affects us personally.
Yes.
And then some of the discs deal with how ancient water is and how it was revered in different cultures all over the world back from the beginning of human.
Like a god in a way. I mean, people worship the water,
Right.
and it was a level of respect for the water.
Very sacred.
Very sacred.
And we've lost that.
And I was just going to ask you,
Yeah.
how through the evolution of that do we move away from we were sacred, honored it, and now we treat it completely different?
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to how you treat yourself. So if you think of yourself as a sacred being, then you're going to look at everything in a sacred way. So that's where I was coming from. So there's 6 more discs. There's a couple of discs that deal with evolution, and those are the wheels. There's a disc in the middle that's actually a gear, and I call that birth because we're all born from water.
Yes.
Right. And so that actually is the power mechanism that drives this whole vehicle. So there's a few more. So each disc has a different idea, and so it took me 3 years to do this because I just wanted to learn more deeply about each of those different areas that I defined for myself. So when you see this thing coming down the street, or it's electric and pedal powered, and it's a sphere because that's water's perfect shape.
Yes.
Is a sphere.
Yes.
So it's kind of a ball looking thing, and then so I do take it out to different events, and that's part of what when you mentioned sharing. That's part of what I love doing is taking the story out. And I could be on Venice Beach, I could be at Burning Man, I could be, at a festival, I could be, at a maker fair, I could be so many different places sharing those kinds of stories. And so it's artful, but it's also mobile, and it's functional because it takes me from A to B or Z, whatever I need.
Well, and you're the person that you have this talent and you're sharing it with the world. And I think that's what's so important about a talent is that you're doing that. But you're also, too, at the same time, you said build to learn.
Yeah.
You are educating us with, our relationship with water and how we're treating that. But it all starts from the inside. So I love that. Right. Okay, so let's talk about another one.
EAW409. That's my very first piece. And it was for Burning Man, or I took it to Burning Man the very first time. And it's actually primary theme was about myopic corporate farming practices. So any of my work you can walk up to and you get sort of drawn into. There's a seduction kind of quality to it. Like, come in, what is that? That's interesting. Yeah. And then you find out that maybe that cupcake has an underlying story about gluttony. Like how much food waste there is, so it's sweet looking.
Rules of attraction, we first with our eyes, but then that's what we follow. And then it opens up our minds so that we can listen to the story.
Right.
And then we need to open our hearts to what the story's telling us.
Right. Yeah. So that's. So
I love you. You're wonderful. I'm getting it. Go on.
Yeah. So the EAW409 is that same thing. So and it's highly participatory also. So you're walking up to this thing at Burning Man. It's a 8-foot diameter wheel that you can spin. You actually walk up and get to touch it. So all my stuff is touchable and interactable I can say that. And so it's
We can
minds
make up
on,
words here,
hands
it's
on,
good.
yeah. So you start spinning in this thing, and part of what you'll see in some of the other footage is I also love animation. And so there's an image of this corn with it's got one eye, and the eye is spinning around the corn. So while you're spinning that wheel, this corn is actually growing, and this eye is spinning, and it actually seats 3 people, but you can get up to 7 and drive around. And so it's that kind of I guess duality or functionality and artful, conceptual artful messaging is kind of what I like to do. And
It's important.
yeah, and that piece actually was in a Smithsonian American Art Museum show about Burning Man, and it was chosen because of all the things I'm telling you about too. So it traveled to different museums, so lots of people across the country got to see it and hear the story. So that's what I love, just getting out there like ambassadors, and then they get out into the community and people get to get hands-on.
And that's really, and I think what I'm hearing from you, that's very important with the art that you're doing, is not only that it's hands-on, but that when I walk away from your art, I'm going to not only tell the story of the art itself and what it looked like, I'm going to be able to tell the meaning behind it. So now you have toured around. I would love to hear, because you've toured around the entire country, how would someone like on the West Coast to the East Coast, how would they interpret? Do they interpret differently, or do we all see the same meaning that Richard wants us to walk away with?
I think everybody sees it in their own way, but my points are pretty simple. I mean, it really starts a dialogue, and so wherever that goes with you, with a total stranger or friend or whatever, I think it kind of ignites and sparks conversation. That's what I try to do, and that's actually with my current work now. That's all about waste plastic.
Yes.
There's lots of layers to
And
that.
that's what I want to talk about, because we have a few minutes left. So go into that one.
Okay, good. So the current work I started about 3 years ago, and the waste plastic problem is it's terrible. And say what you want about recycling, it's not happening at all. They say 9%, but and it's toxic, and we're all feeling it, and plastics in our bodies and all that, so it's not getting any better. So I wanted to build some bigger pieces that were at the same scale as the problem in a way, so I'm doing these giant, they're about 15 feet tall and 15 feet wide, and in this case there's this project I call Liquid Forest, and there's this one spinning jelly that I've been working on. I'm working on more of them now, but in that case you actually walk up and you have to power it, so you're spinning this thing with, again, total strangers, because you need a few people to do it. So I'm bringing people together, and then they don't even know it's plastic, because they know it's plastic, but they don't know it's recycled plastic. And it's got 10,000 LED lights in it, so it's lighting up, and then that same idea with this, it's spinning, and so I have strobe lights on that, and then I have a zoetrope that's built up into the belly of this thing. And so it's getting all kinds of comments and experiences. And I mean, if you just walk up to this and experience this with a few other people, friends or not, and you just have a really great feeling like, wow, this is magical, then I've kind of done my job in a way, like just to forget about the hardships in the moment and just be in that moment is what I'm about as well. So basically there's a whole series that I'm making art pieces, and I've been building these machines that help grind up the plastic that it's all found, that I get from the community and friends and sources. And so one grinds it up, one melts it like an injector, one is an extruder, and I think you'll see that in some of the footage that we have. But, so I built all that because they weren't available. The machines weren't available to do this, and so this is.
So it's a good thing that you build as well, because sometimes you have to build in order to create your art.
So much of that, so much of that.
Wow.
New territory. So you're building new things to get to new territory, and that's.
And that makes sense too. But so you're telling me it's taking you 3 years. You're still working on it, correct?
Yeah. Well, different pieces are, being finished, and so those can exist on their own. But I'm building this bigger experience at some point that'll be called Liquid Forest.
Okay. So my question to you, as we finish our time together, you are building these pieces, and you come to completion, and you have Liquid Forest. In your mind, where would this exhibit be, and why should it be there? Because it gets maybe the most exposure. Take it back to Burning Man. I mean, to me, because and we both are educators at heart, I mean, I see our greatest joy and the greatest generation we can pour into is the generation that will be living here when we're not here. So I can getting those young kids into that. It may be too much for them to turn that, but to get them to experience that. How do you do that, Richard?
Well, so I would love to see it in like Grand Park, because and they want to be. It's really, I know it's influenced by Burning Man because there's no white boxes at Burning Man. You're out in and it's a city, so that's my model. So I'd love to do more placed pieces and experiences within LA.
Yes.
And that way all age ranges can see it. And at my studio, I'm part of this larger, it's called the Precious Plastic Community, and it's a global, kind of network of people that I do what I do, and as far as like working with plastic and recycling and repurposing. And so I actually have school groups at my studio. I have workshops that we're putting together. So we're trying to educate the community. They don't have to see my art or experience my art. They can come to the studio, get hands-on, that kind of thing. So that's part of what I love about building community, and where my studio is a big community of artists, and we open our studios a couple times a year too. So we're always sharing. It doesn't do us any good to sit with it ourselves.
No.
Just let's get it out there.
And I've loved our time today, but I almost wish that we were sitting in your studio.
Yeah, anytime.
and everything. I'm going to make sure I get over there. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely have to do, as you start to build this, we definitely need to come together again at your
Good.
studio so that
Perfect.
I can get my hands and everything too. But so my last question to you as we're here today is, you have chosen to share your talent with the world because you have a desire in your heart to show us about global issues. What's one thing that we could take away with every piece of art that Richard creates for us?
Stop using plastic.
Stop using plastic.
Live a
Love
life
it.
without plastic.
Live a life without. Love it. Love it. Well, we are going to let our audience know how they can reach out to you.
Good.
And when that exhibit is ready, even though you have some pieces together, we want to come back out there and do another show with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for everything you're doing to educate us and educate that next generation so they can live a better life. And thank you for joining us on Everybody with Angela Williamson. Viewers like you make this show possible. Join us on social media to continue this conversation. Good night and stay well.